Welcome, everyone. For our new members, I understand we have some new Highway Commission folks. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Cheryl Everett from the Highway Advisory.
And I'm Larry Tobias from the Highway Advisory Commission.
Welcome. I've been asked to request that everyone move their cell phones away from the mic, and so that we don't get, there's an experiment to see if that's causing some of the interference. So. All right, so let me start off by reading our purpose statement. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters during November 2nd, 2004 and November 6, 2005 with PPRTA funds. This committee reports directly to the Board of Directors. All right. We have a quorum. All alternate members can vote. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Then second.
Ed was second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. Any public comment for items not on the agenda? Any members of the committee? Any members of the audience have any public comment? Seeing no movement, we'll move on. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the January 4th meeting?
I move for approval.
Tom and Rib.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to abstain, and probably Cheryl too, since we were not here for those minutes.
Okay.
So we will abstain from that vote.
Okay. All those in favor of approving minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions are 2. Larry and Cheryl. Very good, thank you. All right, Bev, financial reports.
Good afternoon.
No one could get in your spreadsheet.
I thought that she was going to tell us our salaries.
Everything's passed protected. So for November, as you can see, we received $8,010,000 in sales and use tax, which is almost $873,000 above budget, or 12%. So that makes us $4,734,000 above the annual budget. So we have another good month.
Good.
And on the second page, we're 8% ahead of last year, or $6,470,000. The next few pages, the revenue and expense summary. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Everything's looking good so far.
So that's 8 through,
6 through 9.
okay, and that's the total.
The first 2 pages are the first 10-year projects.
Okay.
And the second 2 pages, which don't have very much.
But that's total funding across all years, not any one particular year. Okay, all right.
And the first pages 6 and 7, you know, the budgets are set there. There's, on the bottom of page 7, oh, it's not finished, but there's another $4 million worth of project budget that could be utilized.
Oh, sorry. For those projects eventually.
That's the pool money from,
Yes.
from RTA 1?
Yes.
Right, okay. And for that pool money, we haven't done this before because it's the first time in the first period, but I would assume that when the projects are all completely billed out and invoiced, that we would make a recommendation to the board to do something with that money, either throw it into
Yes.
Mark Shuffle or Woodman or somewhere, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when do you expect we might do that?
I don't know. I would imagine they want Mark Shuffle to be much further along, but it's getting there. So, I mean, I think that was one of the ones that was a concern at one point. I don't know if it is.
Yeah, no, we got to figure out what. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions for Bev on the financials?
Okay.
Bev.
Thank you.
5B, the capital renewal project revision. I think in your packet, Rick provided a red line version that captures the attempts to capture our discussion from last month. Rick, do you want to lead it off, or you want any comments from anybody? Did we accurately capture everything? Rick?
Which minutes were you really referring to? February 8th hasn't occurred yet. Very bottom first page.
January.
January
11th.
11th?
That's assuming that you're at the bottom of the draft policy.
Yes, yes.
That's assuming that the board would approve this policy on the 8th.
Oh, all right.
But when you referred to it, they also adopted or adapted accordingly. So I don't know, the way I read it, you're reading minutes to refer back to, and it's our minutes and their minutes from last month.
Well, I'm assuming that if you're comfortable with the red lettering, that we will finalize it, put it in tomorrow's board packet for their meeting on the 8th, and then if they approve it, then their attached minutes of the 8th would support this policy.
So for Larry and Cheryl, the purpose of this revision was we have had a few cases where member governments have come through with large increases in projects, and we've been close a couple of times where we didn't have enough information to form a resolution or a recommendation for the board. And by not making a decision, we would delay a project or an approval on something. So this was an attempt to establish some guidelines so that, and kind of bound it so that the member governments would they would know how much information we were trying to garner when they come forward. So this has been going on for a couple of months now, and we finally, I think, have got the wording. Anybody got any comments on the wording of this? Tom, you had a lot to say about it. Does it capture everything?
Yes, I thought, good job.
Okay.
I move approval.
Bev moves approval.
Second.
Tom, second. That we adopt policy 26 and make this recommendation to the board. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Item 6, 2017 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. City of Colorado Springs. Watch that screen.
Yeah. Afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. I've got a few contracts that we'd like you to consider. The first three are basically like service contracts for long life pavement markings, and they are with various vendors, and we have them set at the $200,000 task order limit for RTA funding with $3 million max per year, similar to the other service contracts we've been bringing.
What are they doing that's different that you're doing with the new paint truck?
We ordered those new trucks.
Dave, do you want to, that yours? Or?
And I'm sorry, Dave Scalfrey with Public Works. And the question?
What is different about hiring even Colby or any of the others from what you can do with your new, and I'm going to guess this, epoxy paint truck that you offer to the other members, but you had to have your own people because it was a specialty truck? What's the difference between the paint that's being put down by that
And I have to apologize that I am not equipped to answer that question. That doesn't fall under my purview. I could speculate, but that might cause some problems. So I could sure find out for you. I can make a few phone calls and visit back with you here if that would be appropriate.
Would it cause any problems if we don't approve those three today?
I'll tell you what, why don't we see if we can't get an answer? Because it's not so much the cost, I think it's what the purpose is for versus what operations wants to do with the paint trucks they have and this, and apologize for not, we'll see if we can get an answer.
Thank you, and I've got a question. With the chip seal of Academy that took place earlier this year, or whatever, those markings don't seem to be holding up as well in some places. And at the Woodman overpass over Academy, where you are going south at that ramp that goes down by King Soopers, those markings were almost off the street completely in some cases there. So are those meant to be long life pavement markings? Because they're not very long life.
On the ramps, were they redone, or are those still the original? I don't know that they actually, I drive that all the time, and I don't know if that we've actually done any repainting on Woodman or the ramps since the project was finished. So we'll check that out.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
I traveled that literally the day that they closed all the lanes off, towing a vehicle that was down. So it was very cumbersome. Literally, I talked to Corey because 3 weeks later I traveled it again, and the line markings on this is Academy, for the sake of discussion, between the Chapel Hills Mall and down past Woodman. You couldn't see the markings 3 weeks later. He said that's because it's fresh, and they would have to go back and restripe that. That was from Corey, and it was a personal question. I thought, boy, I can't even see the lines. And it wasn't dark.
And we'll double check this. They might have just put paint down just to get it down, and they had to follow up usually with the epoxy. Sometimes, by law, we have to stripe it before you open it. So a lot of times they just use regular paint, and then they come in and do epoxy. I'm not sure if that's the case, but that might. But we'll look into that and see.
All right.
Is David trying to get an answer?
We will.
Dave's on the phone.
So are you going to come back to it?
Yeah, let's finish the discussion on the rest of them.
Jim, I've got a question on these three as well.
Okay.
At the bottom of the project description, it says this will be a task order-based contract with a task order limit of $200,000 or $3 million per year. That sounds like the task order range is now $200,000 to $3 million, the way it's worded. And the second question is the total budget for the program is $488,000, which leads me to wonder why we have a $3 million per year limit on a contract with a budget amount of $488,000.
Well, part of it, this contract will be used with RTA and general city funds, so there may be other budget. It's just a service contract with an annual limit of $3 million. And then we had a few discussions, and I think the city side is probably $500,000 task order, but we've been coming to RTA with $200,000 task order limits per.
Yeah, that's the boilerplate that they've gone with, the consistent contracting across the city.
It has varied month to month in the verbiage. There's been minor changes in it, but the way this is worded, they could let a task order for $3 million according to this.
A $3 million cap per year, not $3 million task order. The total of task orders should not exceed $3 million.
I understand that, and that's what my understanding was prior.
Just reword.
We can reword that for next
year.
year.
That now is not concise and doesn't say what we have understood.
Yeah, we can make that match.
Mike, you're asking here for clearance on $600,000 worth of this long-last coatings. Is that normally what the city would purchase in a given year? And the second part of that would be, like, what does this buy us lane miles of paint on average?
That I can't answer that. That's operations. So I'm not sure what they typically spend. I think in this case, we're asking for multiple contracts just to have it available.
Then they bill you by project?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that contract's set up. They've got unit prices on that. Mike Zeller's not here, unfortunately. He had to answer those details. His in-laws were in an accident this morning, so he actually asked me to bring some other material. But we can have answers for the board meeting on those. Fix this language. Okay. The next three items are, again, there's service contracts with various contractors for video inspection services to go and inspect the pipes under our roadways. Again, this is just to have a few different vendors or contractors available as needed, and last one is we're renewing or exercising a renewal option on the missing sidewalk program for even pricer. This is the third year that they very good unit prices originally, and they've kept them. There is some adjustments that they are allowed, but they've kept them pretty reasonable. And with concrete going up, we just feel it's a good deal to keep them going.
And you're funding this contract through two different line items, the pedestrian and school.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mike? Are you okay with, I'll be at the board meeting and we can report back on those lane miles and the annual expenditures? Everybody okay with that? Okay.
Dave's coming back. There. Thank you. Yes, I did.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Enlighten us.
Okay. The reasoning behind the contracts for striping, the contractors will be available to be called upon in the event that there is an issue with, the new striping truck coming in. It's scheduled for the end of April is what we understand. If there's some kind of delay with getting the new unit in, then therefore we would have contingencies in place to call on contractors. Also, if there were a problem down the line with the new machine, again, a contingency in place. They do intend to do most of their striping work in-house now, especially with the new piece of equipment. The only place that they would maybe run into an issue is with that the newer truck is, what I'm understanding is, does not spray epoxy. So therefore, if there's a need for long line striping, they would have to call on a contractor for that.
I thought it was an epoxy truck.
One of them was an epoxy truck.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
I was just wondering, we see these contracts, but if someone were to ask me specifically where is my street being fixed, how do I find that out?
You go to their Cone Zone website and it tells you that we had that briefing, they've got the link that
Okay,
tells
so
you the
they can go and see the specifics of these. Okay.
They can see the specifics of work that's planned for next year
That's correct.
and what's
And on
ongoing now.
in the city's website.
City's
as well.
website. Is that all the questions on Mike's contract? Any,
Move approval.
so we have a motion for approval. Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you.
Item 7, Government Report, City of Colorado Springs Transit Service Monthly Update. Mr. Bryant.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Brian Vitulli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metro Transit, with your monthly transit report. For our fixed route services, comparing December of 2016 to December of 2015, there was almost a 1.5% increase in fixed route ridership. For our ADA paratransit services, we saw a 1.7% increase over that same time period. And there was a nearly a 47% decrease for our van pool ridership comparing December of 2016 to December of 2015. Continues to decline. Yep. I think I said this several times. Low fuel costs. There were some turnover, some shift changes with the employees who were using those van pools. So those van pools dissolved, and we're continuing to work with some of the military installations to get van pool services operating there. But numbers are quite a bit down. For our project updates, last week we held our 3 public meetings for our fall 2017 service changes. Between the 3 meetings, we had about 25 people attend. Some of the comments that we received, a lot of support for the frequency improvements on Route 25, a lot of support for the time point adjustments, and also support for streamlining Route 6, straightening out that route on Fillmore Street. But there was a little bit of opposition for a few people who use that service in that neighborhood north of Fillmore. So public comment period is open until February 15th, so we're still getting in some comments through fax and email. We'll look at all of that and come up with our final recommendation, and then final approval will come out most likely in March.
Brian, on that section of Fillmore, east of the railroad tracks there up to going that way, isn't the city planning on doing some fairly serious road work through that section in the next year or two? I would, I've heard, I haven't checked the map for the thing, but any road work along that is going to impact your route, right? I mean, so would you have to reroute it back through like kind of your existing route now?
Yeah, I'm unaware of any road work on that stretch, but this is a complicated project because several years ago we received a grant to install sidewalks and upgrade sidewalks on 4th Street, and that's the section that we're proposing to eliminate. But before we do that, we needed to have the public process to see if the neighborhood and the riders were good with that. And what we're hoping to do is use the money for the 4th Street sidewalk improvements and rescope the project to improve the sidewalk conditions on Fillmore, on that same stretch on Fillmore. Because if you've driven on Fillmore, it's not a very walkable environment. So we're hoping to get the approval to do this, and then we need to begin the design process and right-of-way easement and perhaps acquisition process, and then construction. So if this Route 6 modification does go forward, it's likely to not happen before fall of 2018. It could be early 2019 before we move the route. So it's kind of a multi-staged project. The other improvements, Route 25, service frequency improvements, we need more buses, which will be coming later this summer, early fall. So once we get those new buses, we'll be implementing that on October 1st. And the scheduling modifications will take place on April 30th of this year. So it's kind of it has a couple different rollout periods for the service change. So, any questions?
Just one. You've got the ridership numbers, and comparing the 2 years, do you have access to revenue changes as to what that might be as well? Or can you get those?
Yeah.
Just curious,
Okay.
if you're losing riders, but I know you had a slight increase in cost. I was just curious where you stood.
Well, fixed route ridership is increasing. I mean, excuse me, this is our second year that we've been over the 3 million trips mark. So fixed route ridership is increasing. The van pool, is that what you're referring to, the van pool ridership?
All of it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
was
right.
just curious where you stood financially.
Okay. Yeah, we can try to provide something like that for next month. Yeah.
When is your year end? Is it same as city, June, or is it into December? Calendar, a fiscal year or calendar year?
Well, we have several different entities that we report to.
Because of
So,
federal
yeah,
money,
yeah. So it's, we'll do it in a way that makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Brian?
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I have one question. I don't presume that the bus system pays for itself?
Say that again?
Does the bus system pay for itself?
Oh, no. No.
Have we had a further spread in that, or is that any closer? Or is it just do you have any trend stuff that you?
Well, yeah, the trends are in your packet here that show the ridership from month to month and year to year. But there's not a transit system in the nation that pays for itself. What we strive for is an efficient cost recovery ratio, and system-wide we have figures for cost recovery ratios for that. And
It
that
says the net cost to the general fund.
what are
That's
you
all it
looking at?
costs?
What are you looking at?
On,
Okay, that's the next
Three.
item. That's the maintenance of effort
Oh,
item.
okay.
That's the next item.
I asked the question when you get.
Yeah, I won't be here, thankfully, to answer that, but
Are you ducking the issue?
rightly so, yeah.
Love the big area.
Okay, right.
All
right.
Any other, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, 7B, maintenance of effort. Rick?
Just a technical aside, due to the microphone malfunction, we are recording. It's just not amplifying to the larger room for the public.
So project.
Yes, so for the folks in the audience, you might want to talk a little louder. Okay, maintenance of effort. This is a feature that is included in the original establishing IGA and its successor IGA. And it's the intent of the parties that the funding from the PPRTA will not be used to substitute for or reduce Colorado Springs funding to the existing transit system or to substitute for or reduce any parties, meaning any of the 5-member governments, funding for maintenance activities. And each year in your February meeting, upon the 5-member governments approving their upcoming budget year budgets in December, then we ask them to provide the information, and those 5 attachments are included in your packet. And if you have questions on any one of them, there are representatives from at least City of Colorado Springs and the county to respond, and I can attempt to respond for Manitou and Green Mountain Falls, and of course Cindy is here for Rama. So if there are any questions, I'll allow the member governments to respond.
Looking at the City of Colorado Springs numbers, I guess on page 2 of the document, I don't see anything that reflects the capital improvement projects budget items that accounted approximately $4 million a year to street maintenance for street maintenance funding, starting prior to 2008, being listed anywhere in here.
The capital this only pertains to maintenance, right?
Yes.
The city budgets and their SIP portion of the budget had line item entry for streets maintenance of approximately $4 million a year. And in meetings at CTAB and or here, the city has said that that was one of the primary funding sources for streets for doing the street maintenance. But yet it doesn't reflect in this budget. And my question is if what we were told and what I was told is true, that that is for street maintenance funding, I've never understood why it was in the SIP portion of the city budget, but it's not reflected here. So there's a disconnect in terms of what I've been told and been in meetings with regard to what I'm seeing in the budget.
I don't understand. I'm confused about your question.
What is SIP funding?
Yeah,
Capital improvement projects. And no one has ever successfully
Yeah, but he's saying that in the capital budget, it's listed as street maintenance.
That's exactly right. No one in the city has ever provided an answer to me about why streets and maintenance would be receiving approximately $4 million a year under a capital improvements project entry in the city budget. But at the same time that was done, I was told that that is one of the primary funding levels for the maintenance projects that the city streets department does.
If you can enlighten us, that would be much appreciated.
No flashlights, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Sherry McDaniel. I'm the city budget manager. And my understanding of the calculation for the maintenance of effort for the PPRTA agreements, in the initial calculation and the base that we use in 2014, capital improvement projects were specifically not included in the base calculation. So going forward, we don't include them in that calculation, so we have an apples-to-apples comparison over time. The reason that there's a capital improvement project for the city that is street maintenance is that's the city's portion of paving, basically our contribution. And then, of course, they have PPRTA funding as well. But it is not counted in the maintenance of effort calculation because it was never included in the base. Capital improvement projects were not included in the base.
So this isn't the whole city budget, this is only compared to the base budget, but the items that were relative to the base budget.
Correct.
So you couldn't take this $18 million number and say this represents the total maintenance, street maintenance, transportation, street maintenance area for the city?
That's correct. We do, because you would need to include that capital improvement project, but because it was not in the base calculation for the maintenance of effort, it's not included moving forward.
If the money were being used for street maintenance, why would it be in the SIP section of the city budget?
Because it's a very large $1 million item, and that qualifies the way that we do the financial system. It's a long-lasting asset. It's more than 5 years, and depending on the cost of the road, it's of a certain dollar value, which qualifies it to be a capital improvement project.
Then that means all of the money spent on road maintenance should be capital.
I think, yeah, it probably depends on how you slice it. But salary and benefits and people generally are not ever included in capital projects. So this is just, as I understand it, the cost of the actual asphalt. All of the cost of the putting it down on the road and the equipment and all of that is captured in the between the PPRTA and the general fund operating dollars.
Well, if my memory serves me right, the money disappeared out of the capital improvement project budgets in about 2008 or 2009. And it's amounted to about $28 million, $32 million, maybe $36 million by now. And that's paying for what we put down on the roads and drive-on is what I'm understanding you to say. But yet, it is excluded from the level of maintenance, even though it was included in the level of maintenance when the original PPRTA was done. And that's what I have my issue with.
My understanding is that the capital was not included in the base calculation. It's not included in the numbers that you see on that page for 2004.
Jim, I've got my concern out on the table, and I'm willing to let it lie right now, but I think we've got a disconnect on proper level of maintenance with regard to what the city has been providing in the past compared to what they're doing today.
Well, I do know that there have been some additional categories, if you will, in terms of pots of money and funding and some additional things added to the city budget that were not part of the budget in 2004. And those things would not be accounted for in their level of maintenance because it's, again, going back to the baseline year. So if capital improvements, road maintenance and under capital improvements was added to the city's accounting system and budget since 2004, we're not accountable for that.
I'd have to go back and look at what I've been able to dig out of the city's website, but I believe that the money that was listed in the SIP projects for city or for maintenance, streets maintenance, were in there in 2004, but I could be mistaken on that. The one problem that I'm finding is that it is impossible to find on the city website where money is actually being spent. I can find budgets, but I can't find where the money is being spent. I know you can't, but at any rate, as I said, I've got my comment out, and I understand what's being said here about it's considered a capital item because of the dollar amount and the longevity of the project. But if that's the case, then virtually everything that has to do with the actual roadways we drive on that's done by city maintenance is a capital project. And we're treating maintenance projects and capital projects separately and have, I think, since the day the CAC was formed and the PPRTA came into existence. And I see a major disconnect in here in terms of trying to hold the parties to the PPRTA in compliance with the agreement and what the voters voted on.
Brings up an interesting old point. Gene, your point actually brings up an interesting discussion from several years ago about what is a maintenance project and what is a capital project. And I would encourage the members to ask staff to kind of point you in the right direction so you can kind of review those discussions, because that may be something that might need to be revisited for certain members. I think we had a very long, and it wasn't one session; it was multi-sessional. Yeah.
Well, that's recently.
And yeah, I mean, it's a subject that keeps coming up. So your point is well taken, and one that I've heard many members, including myself, express concern about in the past.
One, I don't think it's the purview of this committee to direct people what categories they put things in, but there are general accounting principles that apply here in terms of what's a capital project and a dollar value, and this asset, it's depreciable over a period of time. There are guidelines that are generally accepted accounting principles that drive that. So it's not some arbitrary, capricious decision that I'm going to hide maintenance money over here in this pot or capital money and call it capital and spend it on something else. So, I mean, you got to accept that they're audited. There's these generally accepted accounting principles, and they're following those guidelines. And so I appreciate what you're saying, but I think it's outside certainly the purview of this committee to direct member governments on how they do their accounting. But is there an answer that you would like from this, or are you just stating your concern?
I'm just stating my concern on it to get it on the record. It seems to me, let me see if I can choose my words judiciously, disingenuous to take approximately $4 million a year that has been dedicated to streets maintenance in the terms of, as the city just said, materials and other items specifically targeted towards repair of the roadway, and because of accounting principles, be able to call those a capital investment when they are being spent directly for the maintenance and upkeep of the roadways that we have. And then, after losing, at the time of the vote was taken for our street tax, pull out approximately $28 million out of the budget and not have it replaced in any way, shape, or form, and pull in another $28 million plus in terms of taxes. It doesn't set well with me, and I don't think it would set well with the public if they had understood what was going on, that they're now being taxed twice for roadway maintenance when the city has dropped 20 to 36 million by now out of the budget that was going specifically for roadway maintenance. I think that if the public understood that, I think that the city would hear an uproar that they haven't seen in a while. I may be misreading the people because apathy seems to be too prevalent. But at any rate, I know that this has been discussed before. I just wanted to get my concerns out. I know that we're not going to be able to solve the problem today, but wanted to bring it up and voice my concern.
Okay.
And I appreciate the time.
So noted.
Have we ever tried to have a private side comparison?
A what?
What it would cost us for a private company to provide the buses versus the city owning? Or we just assume one's better than the other?
We're not talking buses. We're talking roadway maintenance.
Well, let's go talk buses then.
We're heading in that direction, though.
Okay.
Is that on the agenda, or do I have to wait till next time? I'm just kidding.
All right, David.
We have a lot of discussion about vehicle replacement. And I know we've got line items on here for vehicle replacement or vehicle purchasing. And I'm just curious, as like say the vehicle that was the restriper or whatever, where would it be in this sheet?
It wouldn't be because that's a capital project. It's a purchase. This is maintenance. This is just maintenance funding, so that those vehicle purchases were taken out of capital funds.
Exactly. So the striper was out of capital?
Right. Right, Mike?
Bear guy.
Right.
Well, that came out of RTA funds, not city funds. So
Yeah, David.
Try to reflect the city expenditure.
David, are you talking about the $61,000? Are you talking about the $61,000 figure on this in the left column where it has vehicle replacement?
Yeah, that was from 2004.
Yeah.
But this 2016, we just did this striper we talked about.
This is city funds, non-RTA city funds.
Yeah, they're just showing their maintenance of effort from, the original.
The whole purpose of maintenance of effort is that they continue spending their non-RTA city or county funds to at least match the base year of 2004.
So, yeah, I think the non-RTA is the part we failed to talk about initially, because it can be. So this has nothing to do with expenditures that we've authorized. This is just showing that the city is maintaining the level of effort that they were, the appropriate level of effort in 2004 in general fund, not RTA.
And 2004 was before the RTA. So that's the base year, the budget year before the RTA started. It is the baseline that they should not go below with their non-RTA money.
All right, Reb?
I'd like to commend the city and the mayor for meeting their obligation with respect to transit, even to the point that they've overspent by $82 this year in the budget. On the other hand, is there any effort that we put on or pressure to make up the difference that the years that they didn't meet?
Let's not.
We're not going there.
We're not going there.
I'm just asking.
Hey, we're lucky to get what we got. Okay. But considering the stormwater problem, we're lucky to get what we got. So let's. Brian,
thank you to City College.
My comments are actually along the same line. I wanted to commend the city for returning to the 2004 levels of spending. on transit, which is a vital service to this community. And I wanted to also encourage them to find ways and look for, funding ways of making up the 45 to 60% that they're behind as a result of funding being diverted elsewhere during those years. Other cities and towns similar to our size and scope of transit have increased their funding from my rough survey about 45 to 60% in the time period that it's taken Colorado Springs to come back to funding levels of 2004. So that's just something to keep in mind. I appreciate the fact, but the memo was a little bit disingenuous in stating that they've increased by 82%. They've returned to 2004 levels, and let's remember that they're now back to meeting their level of maintenance for the first time since 2011, I believe. So just a little perspective. This is a vital service. It needs to be have continual focus on it because these folks are often the ones who are easiest to forget in our community.
And I would caution you to also look at those comparison cities to see how many of them have had a tax increase. That'll never happen around here. All right, Cheryl, you had a...
Yes, as a newbie, I just would like to kind of restate what I think I've just heard. The general fund transportation maintenance for the city of Colorado Springs was $18,102,556 in 2004. And in 2017, the funds that city of Colorado Springs is going to be spending is $18,338,164. Does not include any PPRTA capital investment. Doesn't include anything. But that's a pretty minor increase
in 12 years.
In 12 years.
Well,
the history might be helpful.
Yeah, well, what happened in 2007 when the bottom fell out?
Yes,
that all the budget cuts went back, and so what's significant about what's happened 2016 and budget year 2017 is the mayor made a commitment to bring back the transit and maintenance level of effort back up to where it was, because from the time in 2007 or 8 when the bottom fell out, they were not meeting their required level of maintenance effort. So,
was there a corresponding decrease in the amount contributed by PPRTA to the city, or did it maintain and increase?
We increased and maintained.
Yeah, because of the tax, but it was just a general fund budget. Our revenue in the city is based on sales tax.
Right.
And when everybody's pocketbook was empty, they weren't spending, and so revenue was down, and they had to make decisions relative to public safety and other critical things, and transit and maintenance, and our roads took a hit. I mean, that's bottom line.
But didn't the general fund road maintenance has always met the maintenance of
Yes,
effort?
it was the road. It was a
Yeah.
transit piece of it. The bus.
No, I got that.
It was a
I got
choice.
No, I understand it's always a choice, but it just seems to me that doesn't PPRTA have a choice as well?
Not really.
Or is it locked in?
It's locked in.
It's locked.
Okay,
Locked in. Transit is 10% off the top of
Right,
whatever
got
we
it.
get,
Yeah,
and
55.
maintenance is by population, so they get their share by
I'm
population.
very proud of the fact that we saved the transit system at the PPRTA with our funding, because the transit system would have been gone.
No, I understand. I'm just talking about the transportation maintenance
Yeah.
budget. And it just seemed to me that if we were collecting sales tax under the PPRTA and got the money, but city had to reallocate, it would seem to me that their allocation, but if it's just on population, I got the answer I was looking for.
Okay. Tom?
I think that the thing that is interesting, though, it's a $235,000 increase over 12 years, and how many lane miles were increased in the city in that period of time. So it's fewer dollars per mile against the roads that are being treated and taken care of. And so that's the hard part, I think, and I think it's been leaning more on the fact that PPRTA's been the good big brother in this whole process.
And then now we got 2C, so it's working in the
Yeah.
advantage.
Yeah, see, we got a tax increase through.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments or questions on the city?
Just one. I didn't see anything in here for the street maintenance section of the portion of this. What's provided by the city appears to be transportation.
It's,
Or is it a combination of both?
the page you're looking at is street maintenance, and then transit's on the backside of that.
Okay.
All right. I would just like to add my comment to Rev and Brian in recognizing that the city has met that commitment and the mayor has stepped up to what he said he would do. And from my perspective in the RTA, it's well appreciated.
For transit.
For transit, yes, for transit.
Here's a quick comment.
Right direction.
The figure might look a little better if we just fix Tabor.
That's another.
Here.
That's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Okay, county?
Any questions? Do you want a presentation or just want to?
Any questions on the counties? You guys got their modified sheet without a little bit bigger print for us old folks?
Hey.
Steve, you can still look at the new one. I mean, the old sheet. You're the younger guy here, so you. All right, Reb.
In 2004, the road and bridge mill levy was 1.5, 1.6, and now it's 0.33. But at the bottom, you've come out with the right numbers. Can you explain how that happened?
Yeah.
I'll go through the numbers, but
What we did is, with the mill levy, we had to reduce the mill levy, of course, with some of the budget cutting items that we had in 2008 when everything kind of crashed. And we backfilled that with specific ownership tax. And then also in the more recent years, like starting in 2008 and 2009, like, for example, employee benefits used to be included within the road and bridge fund. And instead of having it in the fund and then we bill them and then put it in self-insurance fund, we just started putting it straight into self-insurance fund. So we eliminated all of those back bills.
So you eliminated that portion of the mill levy, so you're reflecting just what's actually going into this?
Yes,
Yeah, right, okay.
that's right. Mhm.
Any other questions for the county?
Well, how can the county do this and the city can't?
That's always a question, isn't it?
Just ignore me. It just seems that, if they're going from 14 to 22,
It's choices.
Different infrastructure.
Yeah. It really is
The city's more dense, too. I mean, giving them some credit, the city is a much more dense population center structure to deal with, infrastructure.
And right now,
Also, you're talking about density difference, too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the biggie.
and the county, we had those budget cuts all those years, and now we're really, you can see just in the last 3 years, we're really trying to get a lot of money back into road and bridge to get a lot of those roads back up to the right condition. I've already doubled it.
I can punch him for you.
Go ahead.
You're off act now, so you don't get any.
I'm not off or this one.
Hey, also, the city also has done some incorporating over the term of the RTA, the first RTA. So they've actually taken on more and more infrastructure responsibilities as they keep incorporating larger areas. Although they are selective in how they do it. Cimarron Hills.
All right, any other questions on that? Let's go to Manitou. Any questions on Manitou's statement that's in your packet? And any questions on Green Mountain Falls or Rayma? Cindy can answer all the.
Yeah, $1,000, I'm outraged.
On your what?
I'll pay for it out of our.
Any other comments on maintenance of
No more comments.
Do I hear a motion to make a recommendation to the board we accept?
Second.
And we have a second. Steve, is that you?
Gene.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, City Colorado Springs Board Policy Number 10, Transportation Capacity Reduction. So, for a refresher, this had to do with someone bringing up the fact that Research Parkway was a lane reduction and that it violated this policy that capacity reductions had to be brought separately to the committee and the board for their review prior to being done, and nobody knew about the policy. I would like to offer my comments first, and then you guys can chime in. In reading this transcript that Rick provided with this appeared to be a personal issue about the whether a project was justified on a specific section of street that somebody didn't. They questioned whether or not it was in fact a traffic improvement. It was in the early stages of the RTA, and whether it was really an improvement going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, and then a few people's personal opinions, and out of it came a board policy to take all of those back up there. I couldn't fathom how many lane reduction projects have been funded with RTA since 2006. I'm sure there's more than one. And so I don't see much purpose in this. To me, we're second guessing whether or not the city engineers and the city or any of the member governments are making a decision about the safety or the quality of a project. And I don't see a need for it. That's my personal opinion, but I'll open it up.
In other words, recommending the deletion of board policy number 10.
My recommendation is I don't see a need for it. We need to remove it as a board policy, but that's my personal opinion, so throw it out there.
You say you don't want it removed?
I do want, I would recommend removing it from a board policy based on what I read. I don't, and the reason for that is just reading it, but I drive around all over this city every week doing the student driver training thing, and I'm all over this town. And I can't even imagine how many roads have been, something's been done. Downtown, they put these bump out curbs for traffic taming purposes. They've done a lot of that all over town. And so how many violations of this policy were here because nobody knew about it? And again, what is the value? What benefit is this policy adding to the approval process for a project? It's just another bump in the road for second guessing a decision. I don't know, just my opinion.
I seem to be quite vocal today,
It's okay.
just because I'm learning. But it would seem to me if you reduce a lane, that traffic has to go somewhere. And so you're increasing the traffic on another road. You know, they will take an alternative route if they're so constricted.
Yep.
And so you've increased your capital expenditure by increasing another road in order to meet that capacity. And so you're kind of going, you know, it's kind of like a do loop. I mean, you take it away from here, you got to add it over here. So if you're spending the money on this road and you reduce it, then you're going to have to spend additional funds over here to increase the capacity of a different road.
I'll let the engineers jump in here, but my thing is particularly in this example and in some other examples, it's not so much the capacity, it's the flow and the safety of making a left-hand turn lane in a 3 traffic versus creating a center lane where you've got an either-way turn lane and you're now moving left-hand traffic out, allowing traffic to flow smoother, and it's making it more safe than having someone stop in a 4-lane of a through. I mean, it's more of a safety issue. But Steve,
West Colorado.
West Colorado is an example of how that's going to work.
No, and that's a good example. So I'm the project manager for West Colorado Avenue, and you're stating that exactly. When we did the traffic study for that, we noticed that there's excess capacity on the roadway. It doesn't require 4 lanes for the capacity of the roadway. So reducing the lanes actually was a safer travel way. Like Jim said, it accommodates the left-hand turn. And so what it is, and Jim, to your point, It's just one tool in the traffic engineer's tool bag in order to solve a problem. So, for instance, we don't have to follow that policy for a CFI or a DDI or an interchange type. It's just a tool. So why you would single out what I don't even like the term lane dieting. I think it's right sizing. If you have a roadway that by reducing lanes makes it slower, safer, better, but yet still addresses capacity, then that should be a tool that any engineer, city, agency should be able to use. And Scott, I know Scott's an expert in this, probably. So, so if you have anything to say it too. But, okay, Brian, just a second.
Yeah, I was just going to say that typically part of the analysis that determines whether you should do that or not is there excess capacity or not, and will it adversely affect parallel routes? Because if all you're doing is moving a problem, they aren't really solving anything. So that's always part of the analysis that goes into whether to do this or not. You know, but when you have two lanes with just a center line and somebody wants to make a left turn, then they're blocking a lane in a through lane, whereas by putting that painted median in and going one lane, they can basically get out of the stream of traffic to make the left. And people pulling lefts out of side streets have a refuge to pull into and then wait till they can enter the stream of traffic. So, I mean, there's pros and cons of it, but it is typically agencies wouldn't implement it if you were just going to move traffic to another road.
And in our case for Colorado Avenue, again, as we were looking at how the traffic was distributed, you have US 24 that runs right alongside Colorado Avenue. What was happening was US 24 was getting congested, and 10% of those trips were using Colorado.
Right.
The average design speed, or the design speed was 30 miles an hour. The average travel speed was 40 miles an hour on Colorado Avenue, which talks about excess capacity. And so by doing this project and right-sizing it, eliminating lanes and also providing a safer left turn lane, that then puts the 10% of the trips back on US 24, where your regional trips ought to be allowing the local trips to be more slow and social on Colorado Avenue. So that was just one example, but it's a case-by-case basis. And to have one design technique that requires approval seems like it's out of place. So, Jim, I think you make a good recommendation.
Brian?
Yeah, I agree with what Steve and Scott have said to a very large extent from a purely engineering standpoint. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that studies, great case in point is the Research Parkway study, are quite often flawed and fail to take personal behaviors into consideration. The study said that if we reduce capacity, lane capacity on Research Parkway and create a bike lane rather than using the 10-foot wide sidewalks, that they would slow speeds and without affecting capacity. Well, there was no speed reduction, first of all, and all it did was really piss people off. And there was no concurrent increase in bicycle traffic because, again, even though we have this great community and 320 days of sunshine a year, we have a 194 square mile city. The idea that people are going to bicycle to work and from work on a regular basis is going to be a very small portion of that population. The concern I have, and the reason I kind of like having some kind of review rather than just allowing something like this to go unreviewed by the general public or by the citizens' representatives is for precisely the reason we saw on we wasted millions of dollars up there on a study on reducing the lanes and then having to restripe the lanes after that whole project was deemed essentially useless. I don't like the idea of just saying, well, the study says this. Studies can be manipulated. I'm not saying that's what happened or what was done or what will be done, but you can. Anybody who's taken social statistics in college knows that you can make anything say anything you want by just using different statistics. The concern I have is monies which is our primary purview, making sure these monies are spent in a logical and efficient manner to benefit all of the citizenry, being wasted on not improving capacity and improving traffic throughputs, but rather behavior modification by the government. That's where I see a lot of these bump outs. And the argument is, okay, well, it's a safety thing. But when you see, the good example was last night on the news, you know, we've got 25 high traffic accident crash locations in this city. And one of the reasons we have those is because those intersections are not being properly managed, and you can go down the list and look at them, and anybody who drives through them knows why those problems exist. 198 crashes in one intersection in 1 year. I mean, there are issues where you see traffic being forced, just like you said, to rather than waiting 4, 5, 6 light cycles, turning onto other roads. And then we've got the situation on Platte where you can't, now they've prevented you from turning and using a public road to use an alternate route. You're getting people lined up between downtown and Union Boulevard. I mean, it's trying to modify people's behavior rather than addressing the actual issue, which is, to Scott's point, I think is something that needs to be considered. And this, I do remember that this was one person brought this up because they had a beef with a particular section, but it doesn't make the issue moot. They brought up a good point. It was well discussed, as you can see from reading the transcript. And the board came up with this policy for a reason. I don't think we should just arbitrarily, because we don't feel it applies anymore. There's things that come up occasionally. And honestly, some of these reduction issues that we've dealt with that were never brought before us because people forgot the policy existed, probably should have been reviewed before they were implemented. A little bit of extra scrutiny on that Research Parkway project would have, I think, behooved the city rather than that money going to waste, rather than being well utilized. So I don't see a reason to remove something that exists, that the board put into place, and yes, it was a previous board, but I would rather not second guess just because it was dealing with one specific issue. From the discussion that I read, I think there were good reasons for making it, and I think it's a good thing to keep.
Well, let's not put any blame on those 198 crashes on any of the drivers.
I wasn't engineering for that. So I wasn't blaming anybody for the crashes.
Cindy's first, then Rick and
I actually agree with Jim. It seems like we're going back, and we've had this discussion before, where we're trying to second-guess decisions of the member governments. You know, if they're deciding this and their engineer has done this, I'm not an engineer. Even if they had brought that Research Parkway decision, I don't have the knowledge or resources to second-guess an engineer's decision on that. Whether it was right or wrong, I'm not going to say, but I think we've kind of talked about this before, that if they made this decision as the city or the town or whatever, we have to put some faith in them that if we start second-guessing every decision they make, there's no way. I just don't believe that that is our place. So.
Well, I read this transcript kind of like you did, Jim, and it seemed to me like it was one person's problem. And so I'd like to make a motion to recommend to policy 10 to the board.
I'll second it.
any further discussion?
Yes.
Gene?
Well, I've gone through the transcript, and I have mixed emotions as to what is the proper way to try to resolve this. The Policy 10, as it's currently written, applies to any transportation capacity reduction on any street in the city, whether or not a penny of PPRTA money has been spent on it, in terms of capital or any other. I'll exclude the maintenance on it because I don't think that's appropriate for the discussion. But any roadway in the city that has had no PPRTA money spent on it, we're asking the PPRTA to weigh in on whether or not a capacity reduction is appropriate. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that's right. If it's a roadway or a major capital improvement project that has been through PPRTA and been approved, and now they want to do a capacity reduction on it, I think that PPRTA should have a say in whether or not that money, PPRT money, should be spent to reduce the capacity. We've already spent money to increase the capacity in most cases. By the same token, if any member government came in with a project to reduce capacity that cost $5, it doesn't make sense to me that it needs to go through the CAC and go through the board to be approved. But as I sat here and listened to the discussions and read things, I can't come up with a good recommendation in terms of how to quantify how big a capacity reduction would warrant us weighing in. Maybe more thought of something will glow dimly in the gray matter, and I can come up with an idea. But right now, it's not. And as I said, I'm mixed on whether or not to delete the policy. So I said,
I just for clarity, when I read the policy, it just says that it has to do with the board of directors and the RTA, not just any city thing. So because it says in advance of any payment for such activity. So so if it's not RTA money, then nobody needs to come ask permission. But okay, your point's taken.
My sense is I'm going to go more with Brian on this because our job is to work in a fiduciary manner in dealing with these funds. And it's an expenditure of funds, and obviously lane reductions are not the normal process for roads. Generally, you're thinking the other direction. You're saying no, but I'm saying as a consumer of roads, you see a lot more roads widening than you do see them narrowing. And I just think notice is a requirement here. I'm not saying we're going to vote it up or down, but notice, because people may come to us and say, why did this go on? Well, if we don't even know about it, it kind of makes us look like we're not doing our job.
Okay. David?
My thought is that, first off, Colorado Boulevard and Research Parkway are not
No,
apples and
oranges, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colorado Boulevard was designed originally before you had 24.
It's a boutique street.
That was 24. So the capacity there has obviously changed. So that really doesn't fall in line with Research Parkway. I look at Research Parkway and say, okay, somewhere when they made the development and looked at the households and some of the development that was going to go on, they said, we need this size road here. And that was what was put in. Now, if the city engineering decided to slow down traffic or do whatever with it, and did that by putting bike lanes on it, that happened. It should have probably been talked about, with 10, but at the same time, I'm going to trust that the city, if there's enough backlash from the people that live there, they'll back up and say, you know what, obviously for this group or whatever, we made a mistake, this is not what the public wants, and they'll back out of it. So hopefully it works out. So I kind of mixed either way too, but I kind of only 10 in.
Just for clarity, the city did not spend millions on Research Parkway. That was done for the cost of restriping that they were going to have to do anyway. Is that correct, Mike? So Kathleen told the board that last month that that was not a lot of money spent up there. It was only done for the cost of restriping in-house that they were going to do anyway. So it wasn't a lot of money, and there was public input, and there was a study, so just want to throw it out there that some information was brought up at the board meeting and discussing that last month. So,
Reb?
All right. Because of former profession, I will respect everybody that is an engineer and has a say. I'm torn on this issue as well for two reasons. Number one, they're human. They may make mistakes in judgment, okay? They came to us and told us about Colorado Ave and gave an excellent explanation, whether I agree with it or not. They're the engineers, not me. So respect their professionalism. With respect to item 10, or policy number 10, whether it was a personal issue between an individual or not isn't the point. We got in the problem, the reason this is even being discussed is because of Research Parkway. And I would like to see the continuation of PPRTA 3. And I think there was a failure of communication on the part of the city, and therefore has created a public issue of something that, by and large, I'm not sure that there was an engineering miscalculation in how it was used or not. Doesn't make any difference. I think policy 10, and I can argue both sides of this, so I'm going to take the opposite side from Jim, just to be on the other side. But no, seriously, the reason, if they bring it forth, it has been in the public eye. Whether Steve reads it as Citizen A or Scott or anybody else, we've done our due diligence and said, okay, we're aware of what they're doing. And, quote, I personally take it as a personal responsibility to represent the citizens. And if they had known, and I happen to know some of the people that made the hue and outcry that are friends. But seriously, the policy was put in place by a board. Now we're recommending the board do away with the policy. I don't feel comfortable doing that either. I can make a recommendation that I approve of the policy or disapprove, but that what they do with it, boy, I'm fine with it. Because they're the ones that are elected, not me. So I'm...
All right, Steve, let's nail this in the...
So last day, I just think that the policy is an overreach of PPRTA CAC. It's one design technique. The issues that you're raising can be dealt with in a public involvement approach. That was the problem with research. It should have probably been vetted with the public a little bit better than what it was. But PPRTA CAC, this board making decisions on a design technique, is an overreach.
We don't.
We don't.
Well, you're wanting to be informed before any lane reduction is made. Is that not what policy 10 is about?
It's a board policy.
It's a board policy, not ours.
But it would come through.
PPRTA.
It would come through here. It would come here, but
I think it's even an overreach there. I think that the agencies and the engineer teams and the public involvement process that project takes, you've got to trust that. That they're more informed than any of us could ever be, or even PPRTA boards can be. So I think it's an overreach.
Okay, so Ed, do two, and then we're going to call the question here.
It's more of a statement, but the way I see it, as far as review goes, it's an opportunity to put out some fires and address the situation before it becomes a headache like research. I don't see it as being over scrutinizing or anything of that nature as much as it is bringing it forward, discussing it, putting out any fires, move on. So I don't think it's that big a deal to review.
And it does say presented and approved, so we'd have to, okay. Cheryl?
My background is public involvement, and I will tell you that only a minority of the people show up to attend the meetings and get the information. It's those folks who use the facility and drive it that create the conversation, if you will. And I think Reb's point is well taken, that if we do not act responsibly, not responsibly, but obviously we should do that as well, but if we don't have this policy and it comes before and we know about it and can say this might be an issue to the board, we're doing the board a disservice as well as the citizens who have voted to spend the money, the PPRTA money. So it just seems to me that we should be supporting number 10 just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Let the board decide whether they want to remove it or not. But it's just as, what do I want to say? It's just a responsiveness on our part that we are protecting and looking at the funds being spent, and that we can also raise the issue to the board that this might become a serious conversation they're going to have.
Okay. All right, let's speak with your vote. Let's call the question. So, Rick, you want to add anything?
Oh, no. Is there a motion?
Yes, there's been a motion and a second.
Okay.
So all those in favor, raise your hand.
Wait, refresh.
So,
If you the mo-
I made a motion to recommend deleting policy 10.
everybody hear that? Okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion to recommend removing item, policy number 10, raise your hand. We got how many? 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay. All those opposed? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Yeah.
5 and 10. Okay, thank you. The motion failed.
Jim, I'd like to offer a motion, and as a recommendation from the CAC to the board, that the board reevaluate the wording in policy 10 and to adjust as they deem necessary the wording to make it more specific and less of an overreach, based on the discussions that we've had in here today.
I would suggest that we offer some guidance or some details to the board, because
Yeah, they're just going to send it back to us.
So if, Mr. Chair, could I make this an offer to put this on the next agenda, come forward with some specifically worded ideas?
the
How
next
you would change the wording.
CAC agenda, just
Right.
so.
Should we maybe consider, just as a point of order, maybe consider asking the board if they even want us to bother with this?
I can do that when we present it, and then we can always delete it from the agenda if they said, nah, just leave it alone. I mean,
I think, yeah, before we start getting into that.
so we can have it in the maybe column for next week, but based on the direction we get from the board, they may want to just move on and not address it at all.
Okay.
Be a non-issue for them. Okay. All right, boy, we sure nailed that one down.
We hope I'm not making a fool
All
of
right.
myself in a meeting.
City of Colorado Springs line item transfer.
Something easy.
Mike Chavez, City Engineering. I'm requesting a line item transfer in from some of the city projects, the RTA 1 that we've closed out, and recommending moving into Woodman. Basically, the bid price on Woodman came in quite a bit higher last summer than we were expecting. And so we have right now, the budget has about 5% or about $1.5 million in contingency, and we'd like to bump that up. We were hoping to get 10, but if we do move the 700,000, that's still not quite 10, but we just would like to move some money in there just to have in case. Things are going well, but I think I've talked to the board about if we'd be allowed to roll city projects into Woodman, we can stay away from that 4.9 reserve for now, and that's basically the request.
Just a quick memory refresher, and it might also be good for some of the newer members too. If I remember correctly, the reason for the increase of the cost on Woodman was because of soils and potholing and some things that popped up.
No. Basically, it was just construction cost increases. We had a 95. Yeah, inflationary. We had a estimate. At the final design, we were thinking about $24.5 million, and the bid came about 31.
Okay.
So.
Didn't the utility, the water line, the big water line added some cost?
Yes, and a lot of this cost is utility costs, which will be reimbursed, but we just need to have funds to cover it
Up front.
Up front.
Okay.
Gene?
I'd like to
You got enough to finish the landscape on?
Yes, we did keep on.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Tom and then Larry?
I was going to move for approval.
Oh, okay, I've got one question first.
Okay.
For the Fillmore Street corridor, I-25 to Centennial,
Mhm.
you said that project is completed?
Yes.
What was that project? Because that road did you resurface?
Okay. That project was,
Is that the Chestnut Street?
yeah, Chestnut realignment.
Chestnut Street interchange
Mhm.
realignment?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, the rest of these are going up the hill.
Yeah, and it's,
Centennial's still a mess.
yeah, and CSU's been in there, and we purposely haven't done any resurfacing. I think once all that water line work is,
All right, so this
street's
is
got to,
Chestnut Street.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
No.
Then we go.
Back to Woodman, didn't that project also go up? I want to say it was east of Rangeview or Lexington. Didn't you run into some personal septic problems as well?
Well, that was part of, yeah, there were some septic systems that we moved for the residents, and that was paid for. I mean, that was all part of the cost.
Yeah, that increased the cost.
Yes,
Okay, Larry, last question, we won't call.
Do we expect to see additional requests for transfers to that Woodman Road project, or do you think this is the last?
I would say we might see some more. Again, we still got a little bit, some money in the RTA 1 city side that if we need it, we'll request those transfers rather than coming, for the reserve. We'd like to, I think the county's looking pretty good, and they may not need that reserve. So once they're done this spring with Mark Sheffel, hopefully we can move that 4.9 to something new.
Yeah, just for your benefit.
Edification.
Edification. It's kind of been agreed upon, there's been the practice as the member governments wrap up projects that they're allowed to share money that's been allocated to them or budgeted to them to other projects as needed. And it was kind of the plan was as they rolled out and finished up RTA 1 projects, as they closed those out, Woodman was underfunded. As those other projects closed out, they would roll money into it. In the end, we had that was collected. PPRTA 1 projects that are wrapping up. Mark. And so all the little projects, as they wrap them up, are going to roll into those projects until there's no more. Ed Dill, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Administrative actions, report of recent board actions. Any comments on Rick's summary of the?
There's one minor error that Reb found in the
Maintenance of effort?
No. Well, is there another one? This is a report of recent board actions, number 7. They did approve all 5 contracts, but it's not as recommended by the CAC. You'll remember that the CAC did not recommend the America the Beautiful Park Bridge, but the board did approve it.
They overrode us. I was going to cover that, yes. The board did override our decision to not fund the bridge and decided to fund the bridge. So,
As is their purview.
What did you say, Rick?
I was going to ask for a report on that.
yeah, they had some discussion on it. It wasn't a unanimous vote.
It's 3-2.
It was 3-2 on the split. So,
Really?
Yeah.
And if you'll notice, none of the 3 commissioners were there. Just give you a complete update. And Tyler Stevens wasn't there. I can tell you who wasn't there.
So just who were the voting members?
Three city
Manitou,
council and Manitou Springs.
Rama. Rama's,
Yeah.
Was
guy
Turner
Turner
was
was there,
So
and the city.
Merv,
Larry.
was Larry there?
Yeah.
Bill was there, Bill Murray.
Bill and the guy from Ramo were the two that voted it.
Fortuitous timing.
So it was Merv, Larry, and Bill, plus Turner Smith and Nicole from Manitou. Those were the five.
Interesting, okay.
So
Gotta love the politics.
they liked the discussion,
Oh, I'm sure.
and they had some discussion, but bottom line is that they overrode.
They
our
voted where they
recommendation.
lived.
All right, any other questions on that? Legislative report?
Okay. As I indicated in the memo, House Bill 17-1018 came up real fast. Representative Larry Liston came in, asked if I would if I would support, and I said I have to take it to the board. I did take the board, but I, in my flurry of activity of holding down two jobs, I failed to bring it here. So I apologize for that. But I did take the board. The board did authorize me to support that bill, and I went to the legislature, to the Transportation and Energy Committee last week, and testified, sitting next to Larry Liston, testified in favor of it, and it did pass the committee 10 to 3. And the board also authorized the letter, which a letter of support, which is in your packet. So that's House Bill 17-1018, which is simply extending the sunset provision on a 2009 bill that Larry Liston also co-sponsored, which allows RTAs, and there's still 5 of them, to go to the voters and ask for a property tax. And of course, our board, our CACN board, in the whole 12 years existence of the RTA has never expressed any interest in a property tax. But our board did support that. Larry Liston to have it as an option in the RTA statute, and the legislature did approve that in 2009. But it had a 10-year sunset, and this bill would just add another 10 years to the sunset. And ask for a property tax.
If we can ever educate them properly on it.
So we'll see. We'll follow it and see how it does in the House, and then it'll have to go to the Senate. Then the second bill is the Senate Bill 17-11, would create a demonstration forum to the CAC is it's in your packet. The CAC is being requested to make
Somebody like Ryan hiring them from a distance.
I'm not in a position to defend or answer your question.
It does look like that somewhere we should have somebody from RTD or Springs or some transportation.
(17-011).
Yes.
They should pursue it.
Yes.
Just because.
Well, who are we to question the people in trying to do something for our public, right?
I apologize, the action, in the action column on your agenda. So probably need a motion to amend the agenda to make it recommendation instead of information. Sorry about that.
Oh, my God. Can you have 5 minutes to read this?
So moved.
To amend we have a motion to
Second.
amend the agenda to change item 8B from informational to recommendation. Do I hear a second for that? Mr. Dills, Mr. Hoover? All those in favor?
No.
Aye. To amend the agenda?
Yeah. I don't have a problem with the first one, but I have a real problem with the second one.
We were just amending the agenda, not making a recommendation yet.
Well, can I make a friendly amendment then? Can we bifurcate them and make it the first one, which we've had considerable discussion on, and I never even heard of 17011 until last Tuesday, and I did spend probably 3 hours trying to find it in a draft form for a totally different committee. We're voting on a recommendation for the board.
Not on the first one, the first
second
one's
one, not
kind
the
of already
first
been done without us.
The second one's already been done.
The
first one.
Yeah.
Item B is 2 items.
Correct.
Item B has 2 items I can vote for. Item 1,
Well,
to read the second one.
yeah, on the,
Restart
Informational.
the House bill is, the board's already taken action. It's just the Senate bill.
Would you amend your amendment to say that we have this information / recommendation so that we satisfy Rev?
I would love to.
Okay.
Sounds good. It's all right, attention to detail is important.
Since this is a public meeting and our agendas have to be published prior to.
You can amend.
You can amend an agenda by
Because the
sunshine law.
item is listed. You can't add an
want
item
Rev
and then
against
take
it.
action, but if it's
He's a
listed,
rebel.
you can take action. Sorry.
You can also change
Okay,
the order.
so Cindy has modified her thing to change the action from informational / recommendation so that Reb is more comfortable in his own skin.
Did the seconder second the friendly amendment?
And Mr. Dills. So, all right, so all those in favor of modifying the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Reb, are you clear now?
I'm clear, but literally, that is item 8B. Both require a recommendation, so now it's going to be bifurcated.
Why is it going to be
Bifurcated.
They have already.
Item 1 has already been
The
done.
board did.
So you're saying, literally, all we're doing is voting for item 2, the Senate
Yeah.
bill?
The Senate, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Which is why we changed it to an
Yes.
information /
Yes.
action.
Yes.
All right.
Are you happy now?
Yeah, I'm going to vote no. They may not have told you the truth. You may be voting for something you don't know.
Well, I stayed in the Holiday Inn last night, yeah.
I stayed in the Holiday Inn Express.
That's what the difference is.
There it is.
Funny thing is, I slept late.
I honestly have not read it. I can't, I don't know how I feel one way or another because I hadn't read it. On the surface, it sounds like a pretty good thing, but
Mr. Chair, I would propose, since I'm assuming the board is probably going to take action
Next week,
at their next meeting.
or at least discuss it.
Yeah.
that we have no opinion.
I think he's courageous to
That-
assume anything.
We allow this item to pass without recommendation and let them discuss it at their meeting, because it's clear that we were unfortunately unprepared for the discussion at hand.
But if I could interject, I did read the bill summary. I'll admit, I did not read the entire bill.
It's
But based
hard,
on
it's
the
hard,
bill's
yeah.
summary, I think we can recommend, or I can recommend support for the bill. So if you want to do that, that's fine, but I feel comfortable.
Okay, so let's, any discussion on the second bill of that? Just a minute. Tom had his hand up first. Sorry, Scott.
Tom.
Senior moment.
I just look at this 8-86-103 Forum to Study Transportation Access Needs People with Disabilities membership, and I think they need to have someone with practical experience on that board that has to deal with this problem. That would be a recommendation coming from us up to our board to make make a decision on.
Do that.
Zach.
Yeah, okay. Scott?
I was going to say, it looks like they're just asking to form a study group to look at how some advanced technologies could be used to assist people with disabilities. It's interesting that they specifically call out El Paso and Teller counties in the legislation, but I would be curious to see what our transit staff think of this, because it's going to be it's probably going to be on them to have to implement this.
Well, I can speak to why they singled El Paso and Teller out. Is they wanted to find a good
Urban-rural
rural area with a high percentage of disabled population. We have a large veteran disabled population here, and that I do know from reading through what I was able to understand of the summary that seems to be one of the reasons they're looking at this study area being here.
Rev may have something to add.
He always does.
Paybacks are hell. Last week, we have a committee called the Mobility
Coordinating
Committee
Yeah.
that meets monthly as well. And there are people there from Teller. Park County has 2 people, I think. And they have a legislative liaison, so they brought this up. Nobody was aware of it, including me. So I went online, found it yet on our Colorado website. I find that interesting because they've been in session for almost a month now. And generally speaking, i.e., Senator Dills over there or Representative Heverlo or Tobias, whomever, have it on an agenda. Yet this is already out here, and I hadn't found it until, and I didn't pay attention to it because it was information. I thought I could read this before the end of the month when we go back to the MCC meeting. So personally, I'm going to vote no, period, out of ignorance. And when I say ignorance,
you could abstain.
We're used to that.
What? I'm sorry.
Over and over again.
Who said that? Is that Ed?
Cindy's trying to explain.
In the bill itself on page 7, it actually says the forum shall invite representatives of various interested groups, and it spells out quite a few that understand disabilities, probably about, 10 different organizations, including area agencies on aging, independent living, taxi cab, transportation network.
Cindy,
So,
I agree with that, but there's no member of the board
right.
that's that.
You're right, but I wanted to make
They're
sure-
visitors, they're not residents.
Right.
make sure you, okay.
And I, just for information for you guys, the Mobility Coordinating Committee, kind of headed up by the Area Agency on Aging here, is in the process of implementing software and combining the dispatch system for all of the independent service providers, Silver Key, all the ones that provide ride service, to include Mountain Metro, are combining into a single dispatch center where there's one call, and they've been working on this for a couple of years now, and they're in the actual implementation phase of that now. And so that is a technology improvement in providing more efficient service to disabled folks and people that use that transportation services. So I think that's probably gotten the attention of several other people around the state. And so this may be kind of tied to that, but so just that was information for everybody that wants to know. So let's I hear a motion to make a recommendation that the board support this initiative.
I would like, if we could have that motion include Tom's recommendation and commentary.
But it include people with practical, organizations that actually deal with the problem today.
At least somebody on that board.
Good.
who was a voting member.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Cindy, you want to make that motion then?
Yes.
Do we have a
So
second?
how does the motion actually read
So,
now?
so the,
Support of Senate Bill 17-011 with the recommendation that we would like people with, how'd you word it, practical
Practical, technical experience
included
dealing with
on
the
that
issue.
committee.
Yeah, I'd second that.
Board of Directors. Okay. Do I have a second for that? Ed?
Ed.
Okay. All those in favor?
You say me. I think we call him Rebel, don't we?
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Agenda topics for next meeting pending would be the rewording of policy number 10 to be less,
Sure.
no, less, more specific.
Yeah.
Specific.
Jim, I'll do my best.
Okay. Let's see. Got any-
In my capacity in Calhan, they're looking to expand. Send out
And I found out yesterday, in transportation, talked about the location study that was done when he briefed that. I just found out yesterday that the mayor, I've been appointed as part of the mayor's committee of that selection, the down select of that, so.
Condolences.
So I took part in the stakeholder part of that process, and so I just found out yesterday that I've been made part of that final selection committee, so.
Thank you
just
for
letting
taking
know.
the time to
Yes,
do that.
thank you.
So.
Yeah, we need somebody to blame, so I'm glad you're
I said
Broad shoulders.
always looking for
Broad
someone to blame.
All right, any other comments? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Cindy,
Good chance, drive research.
Okay.
has been a report twice.
Try to behave yourself. I know it's difficult.
Bounces you up over.
PPRTA sticker on it.
Could help me out by keeping my honorary brother in line, but I know that's not easy.
Just got money.
Take care.
PPRTA to purchase the van, so it does, but they, nobody knows whether they got a minivan.